Nishawetile. My name is Mudindambebana. Welcome to the chosen generation. Grief, the mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional response to a loss that matters. Today we are going to learn how to survive when you don't feel like going on. Joining me today are a few guests who are going to help us unpack this issue a little bit more. First, I'll introduce Pastor Given Malakalaka, who will be offering us some guidance as we tackle this deep issue of grief. I'll then like to introduce Ngedisi Nkoma. Thank you so much for being with us. He is a relationship expert, right? And last but not least, we have an author by the name of Tami Sibanda. Would like to say to you, please, you can join this conversation by following the hashtag TCG on SID and let us know what you think. Perhaps you have a story about grief that we can learn from. Let's go into the conversation right now.
Okay, it depends. With me, I stress a lot, but I don't die in that stress. I take my time and think of the situation, of the ways of getting out of that situation, and find ways. If I don't find ways, then there's no use for me to stress about it. If I can't do anything about it, why would I stress about it? So I have to find ways to forget about it. Yeah.
I think most of the time I'll spend time on reading the Bible. I think that helps me, that gives me comfort. Yeah, I think through reading the Bible, spending more time with God, that helps me.
All right, gentlemen, let's get into the conversation for today. I think I'm going to start with you, Brother Tami. Can you first of all tell us the title of the book that you wrote? In the introduction, I introduced you as an author. But also, I'd like you to add on that and tell us what inspired you to write that specific book.
Yes. The title of my book is Healing Through Tears.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Okay.
And what motivated me to write this book is my experience.
Okay.
I actually suffered losses in my life. People were pillars in my life, my parents, my caregivers, and all that happened within a short space of time. And by that time, I had no tools to navigate through this grief process. I did not know what was happening. But as time went on, I realized that there were a lot of things that started cropping up in my life. And most of those things were because of unresolved issues in my past. So I realized that there are a lot of people that are going through the same thing that I went through. And this is because mostly we live in a society that actually emphasizes efficiency over effectiveness, that emphasizes, that talks about faster being better. So what we do is that we want to grieve as fast as possible so that we can go back to our normal lives. Yet what is actually supposed to happen is that we're supposed to honor the process so that when we come out, we have truly healed. So basically, this is what inspired me to write this book.
Oh, that's really one to read. That's very interesting. Thank you for that. I think let me bring you in here, Mr. Ngedisi. Oftentimes growing up, they tell you, a man, you must take the punches, True. This is life. Maybe as an expert, why do you think it's important for us to acknowledge that grief exists first? Yeah.
True. Grief is a normal part of life.
Okay.
It's one thing that we need to accept as a normal part of life. If we have to go to the scriptures, they also emphasize that there is time for tears, there is time for laughter, as much as there is time for mourning and there is time for dancing. Yeah. So given that, we need to accept the fact that grief, as much as we want to play and enjoy, grief and sorrow is still part of the life's processes. And life is actually a strand of two strings, of sweets and sours. If we don't have these two both, then our lives are incomplete. So it's one thing that we need to accept. Grief is an opportunity for a laughter. That's what it does in our lives. Yeah.
That's interesting, Pastor. Maybe this is he quoted a biblical scripture. Maybe you're the right person with authority to actually speak next. There's a time for pain. Why should we not be afraid of all those stages, such as pain and the things that we feel during the process of grief?
The thing is, with everything, with every moment, you can't actually say, I've been happy without really being happy in the moment.
Okay.
You have to let go and experience the moment in its fullness.
Okay.
To look back and say, I was happy at that point. The same with grief. That is why Paul in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4:13 says, brothers and sisters, we do not want you to be sad or to cry like those who are uninformed.
Okay.
But we want you to weep and grieve, knowing that we have a Christ who died for us, who also, when he shall come, Christ or God shall bring with him those who have hope in him. So what is Paul saying? We must grieve. We must make time to grieve. We must engage in grief, feel it, so that once we have dealt with the pain, we can go over it. It's difficult to go over something that you don't focus your attention on, particularly grief. It will not go away. It will hang in there. There will be some residue of grief because you've not dealt with it, and it will overflow into other aspects of your life because you've not dealt with it. But once you make time for it and experience the pain, you are able to embrace a smile later on and laughter later on because you've been through the grieving stages.
That's very interesting. I think on that note, let's go to a break. Viewers at home, please share your views with us. The hashtag is TCG on SID. Let us know what you think about this issue. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Chosen Generation. We are still talking about the issue of grief. And I'm here with my guests who are helping us unpack this issue. Don't forget to also share your views with us. Again, the hashtag is TCG on SID. Let us know what you think about the issue. Back to us guests. There's an issue that you mentioned before the break about a man. And I want us to explain, how does a man cry? Maybe you can teach us. Is it he? What is this? How can you say that? Yeah, he, like, how is a man supposed to cry? Because we don't know that. We've never been taught. Maybe I'll start with you, Pastor. Teach us how to cry.
The best way is to be natural about it.
Okay.
Do not try and copy how other people cry.
All right.
Because then you will not cry genuinely.
Okay, there we go.
Do you, if you are a person who cries he and tears, do that.
Okay.
The thing with grief and crying is that you have to do it the way you are. Don't try and copy other people. What is appropriate for another person may not be appropriate for you. So cry the way you know how. Sometimes people may not see tears and they may think you're not crying.
Okay.
But you could be crying in other ways.
Okay.
Do you? But do not be afraid to shed tears, whether it's at the graveside, whether it's before a coffin while you're looking at your dead loved one. Do not be afraid of that. Let your tears show. If you're in front of your children, let them know that daddy is hurting. Let them know that you are in pain as well. You're experiencing the same loss that they have experienced as well.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Maybe just to add on what Pastor Given has just mentioned, Uti, cry as you feel it.
Okay.
Which will come naturally. of course, culture has made these things into uthi abafazi baya. They go all out and cry loud and all that stuff. But I mean, if you feel like you want to cry and voice it out as a man, it has an effect in you. Because it releases anxiety, it releases certain pressures that has a tendency of affecting your psyche and later your health. The other thing that I wanted to mention, Mfundisi, uthi tears. It's just like any other bodily fluid.
Yes.
It works with this from the mind. The mind, controls all our hormones and stuff. And at some point in time, some excretions has to come out. Be it tears, be it sweat, be it whatever. Tears is part of a normal bodily process, which needs to happen in an individual. Should it be closed up? If you consciously close it up, it has an effect also in your body and in your psyche. So if tears have to come and roll down, it's not always grief that actually causes tears. It also can be joy that causes tears. For instance, in my case, tears come often when I'm joyous. So it's a normal thing, and it helps because it brings about healing and restoration. So yeah.
That's interesting. Brother Tam, we've not forgotten you. We're still here. I think the two distinguished gentlemen have spoken about this miracle of crying. And perhaps you can also share your I don't know, anecdote. How must we, how can we cry? Or because you are an author of a book and you're talking about an issue where you were broken down by certain issues in your life. How did you cry? How did that crying manifest in your situation?
Well, for me, at the beginning, I did not cry.
Okay.
Yes, and this is where the downfall was, because I did not cry. And over a long time, I was accumulating a lot of issues.
Okay.
But the moment, I always say that when I started writing this book, I just wanted to write a general book. Okay. But the moment I started writing this book, it was like I was getting it out. And that gave me permission to actually explore and experience my feelings. Like the pastor said, grieving is about experiencing the grief. Okay. And if you try and bottle it, and if you try and mask it, you're actually preventing the process that is the healing process. So you need to expose yourself to the pain, because you need to understand that pain is not the enemy in this case. The enemy was the loss, but the pain is there to activate the healing process inside us.
I think Brother Tammy mentioned the word process, right? And I think I want to take it up with you. Why is grief a process? Why can't something happen? Or maybe I can climb a mountain and I come down and I'm okay. Why must we go through? It's so time consuming. I'm a busy person, you don't want to go through grief. Why is it a process?
Yeah, look, grief is indeed a process, as much as it can be a task.
Okay.
Because life is a process. So it is made up of processes that are complex, that are working together for an end, if I have to put it that way. Okay. So grief itself is a process. We need to accept the fact that it's something that cannot be cut and paste process, in the sense that he experienced pain in his own setting, which is different from any one of us. Yeah. Of course, death, we've faced death in our families, but it can never be the same, and we can never feel it the same, and it also doesn't come the same way. So the way an individual responds to it is a beginning of a journey, rather than a stage.
That journey,
yes.
Where the bus stops, where are we going?
There are psychiatrists who came up with theories, if maybe I should bring that in, and say they brought in theories to try and understand and to try and conceptualize grieving. One of them, of course, is Kubler-Ross, the psychiatrist, the Swiss psychiatrist. He mentioned 5 stages of grieving, which speaks of your denial, your anger, your bargaining, your depression, and the last stage that speaks of acceptance.
Yeah.
There's another one who comes with this different one, looking at tasks rather than a process.
All right.
So once you get to understand these, for instance, denial is brought by shock. When you get bad news, you are in shock, then your reality changes in that instance, and you can't accept the change of the reality. Therefore, you push it away and you deny it and you close off, which is why he closed it off. He said, no, this is not happening. This is not my reality. I can't accept it. I'm okay. Let me just go on with my life.
Okay.
And he never accepted it.
Maybe let me bring in Pastor. Why is it important for us to therefore see someone or deal with it or go and speak to someone to help us in the process of grief?
Yeah.
Why can't I just do it myself?
Well, you can do it yourself, but it's always good to find help. So when you're talking to somebody else, you are also speaking out your emotions out loudly, so that you know actually how you feel about it. But also the brain registers that you are dealing with the grief. Most of the times when you deal with it yourself, the thoughts are just internal. They're not manifested outwardly. So when you do speak about it, it registers that I'm going through this process, which is why if you check, one of the best ways of recalling something that you studied is to write it down. So one of the ways that you can, they will give you if you are speaking to somebody, they might tell you to write some of your emotions down so that you register, I'm going through, this is how I'm feeling today. And you will see as you go through it with this person, that you will notice that your emotions are no longer the same as from the beginning as time goes on. You'll find that they may be intense today, they get better as time goes on, but a year later they can be as worse as when it first started, because grief is a journey like that, and it's better to go through it with somebody else.
Okay, wow. Thank you so much, Pastor. What is your view on what has just been said? You can share your comments on hashtag TCG on SID. Let us know what your views are. We'll be right back after the break. Stay tuned. Welcome back to The Chosen Generation. We are still speaking about grief. I'm here with my lovely guests, and again, I encourage you to share your views with us. The hashtag is TCG on SID. Let us know what you think about this subject. Perhaps you can even share your story with us. I think I'll start with you, Brother Tammy. As part of the process of dealing with grief, why would you say it's important that someone should do things that make them happy?
Yes, I wouldn't exactly put it that way.
Okay.
Yes, because the goal of grieving is to find happiness after a traumatic event, but it's not necessarily the means of grieving. You know, you don't have to grieve through finding
to be okay, to be
doing
where
things
you were
that,
before.
yes.
All right.
So it's the goal, but it's not the means of getting to the goal. What do I mean by that? I mean that sometimes you need to do uncomfortable things in grieving. One of those things is actually facing the pain head on. One of the things that I also speak about the book is that it could be necessary for you to step away from the comfortable support group of friends and receive a healthy dosage of depression. And this is what will help you to actually process the event from a sober point of view. Because, you know, in the company of friends, you can mask a lot of feelings. You don't go over everything. So it's not about looking for those happy things to do, but it's making happiness to be the final goal. But while you're doing that, again, you want to find balance between being happy today so that you're able to go on, because you don't want to end up being suicidal, and being happy tomorrow. So there has to be that balance. But what I will say is that you need to do things that definitely boost your self-esteem, because you don't want to be around people that lower your self-esteem. Because sometimes when we have support groups, which could be a nice thing, the problem is that we become dependent on them. And when we do nice things,
to sort of escape.
even nice things can become our escape, because now every time when those things come, I go to that place. It becomes like a drug. So I wouldn't say you need to do nice things. Yes, at times you need that so that it keeps you going, you know, but there must be a balance of doing the nice things and the things that are needed for you to be happy tomorrow.
That's very interesting. I think what you're bringing up is what I actually want to ask you about, this relationship between the mind and body, and you know, yeah, if you like, physical health and mental health, that we always have to, there's some intricate relationship. Maybe if you can speak about that. How do we really work through those two issues?
Look, let's look at South Africa.
Yes.
And look at what is happening in South Africa in general.
Yes.
And you will see the psyche, the mind, and you will see the body.
Yes.
In the whole of the communities in South Africa. First of all, I'll mention the issue of after tears, so that we make it relevant to the people at home. The issue of after tears speaks of dealing with grief with a mind of trying to escape from it, which is not good, which is not natural, which then suppresses as a powerful emotion. Grief is a powerful emotion, and if we harness it, then we can be able to employ it properly where we need it to, because it's ours. We need to own it. The challenge that is happening now in South Africa, you will agree with me that South Africa is an angry nation. Angry in the sense that we are involved in all destructive, you know, the group psych. You know what I'm talking about.
I get you, yeah.
Then you try and understand how the mind of the whole, you know, country works. Then you discover that because of this trend of posting things after, you know,
after
funeral
the
wake, speaks to a person or a community that is trying to deal with grief and shove it in a corner and say, that doesn't exist, here am I. But then when reality strikes after, then the emotion that was created in or caused by death comes in and is used or is channeled in a very destructive manner. Yet if we deal with it at the right space, we can then be able to deal with whatever challenges that we're facing in a different setting altogether and not play out the emotion in a negative way. So bringing it to the individual, the same thing actually happens to the individual. You don't deal with it, you don't accept it, you don't own it, you don't control that emotion, because it's an emotion that you need to control and work with it. Then you can be able to channel it the way you want it in your life. The moment you lose that control, then anything is bound to happen.
Wow. Okay, that is a mouthful. Maybe I can bring you in here, Pastor. From your perspective, being in charge of numerous children of God, I'm sure you play the role of helping them in this through that situations of grief. Perhaps somebody is in that situation right now. What would you say? How should they deal with this life-changing event, such as loss, whatever it is, whether it's a job, whatever it is, even a loved one? What can they do? What can they do?
I've observed in my own personal space where I lost my grandmother a while ago. But what kept me going was the memories of what we used to share together when she was still alive. that gave me strength to go on, to go to school, you know, to be able to have something to talk about. At first, I didn't want to say anything. I didn't want to speak about the loss.
Okay.
My teacher actually observed and said, "What's wrong? These days, I ask questions in class, you keep quiet, and you're usually the first to raise up your hand." And he spoke to me and said, "Hey, please take a few days off, 3 days at home. It's fine. You'll come back when you're okay." And my local pastor said, "You need to talk about it. Don't be afraid to talk about it. I know you might feel that it's awkward, but it's actually good if you talk about it. So you and your family members, your siblings, think about the things your grandmother used to say. Laugh about them. You will gain strength from that." So that's what I would share with somebody who's going through grief. Think about the memories, the beautiful things that you used to do with your loved one. And dwell on that. In fact, there are people who have used grief, who have turned their grief into a positive thing. You find people who have lost loved ones, who have lost, who have had stillborns, and in the name of their children, they start foundations in remembrance of what God had blessed them with, a child. And because they want the memory of that child to live on, they start a foundation for children or whatever it may be. I'm sure you have seen something like that. That's one way to go about it.
Absolutely. Look, I don't know what happened to the time, but we really have run out of time. But I would like to thank you so much, Guess, for helping us, even if we've just scratched the surface. I think it will help somebody there at home. Thank you so much. It's really appreciated. To the viewers at home, thank you for allowing us in your space, and we hope to see you next week in other programs. And maybe a final word. You know, Jesus says his ministry is to heal even the very brokenhearted. And we have seen how grief can put such a deep indent into the life of a person. And perhaps you need someone who knows you very intimately to heal you. And I hope that person can be Jesus, the one who saves, who sanctifies, and satisfies. Finally, I would like to say to our viewers, if you have more to add on this topic, the hashtag is TCG on SID. Let us know what you think. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel, which is called the SID Media on YouTube. Thank you so much for being with us. See you again next week. Goodbye.